A secret room? I would never have imagined. What else could my parents be hiding from me? I was set to explore when I heard my mom scream.
Paul!
I ran out of the basement to see her hovering over my sister's unconscious body. My name is Paul. My family is not regular, as you might have deduced. My parents were extreme disciplinarians. I'm talking food, leisure time restrictions, and even sending their children to live in the basement as punishment. This was how I discovered the secret room. My sisters and I are introverts, a personality obviously influenced by the kind of upbringing we had. Investing solely in my studies kept me in my dad's good books most of the time. I did this because my punishments were always the worst. That didn't last long. Some of my classmates were jealous. They couldn't fathom how I always topped the class. Then the rumors began. I had been stealing test questions. My calm look was just a facade. On the day things fell apart, I was in a biology class when the school secretary called me to report to the principal's office. The principal had gotten wind of the fake news, and I was summoned by the school's disciplinary panel. I watched in despair as my classmates testified against me one after the other. It broke my heart, but I didn't have friends, so no one could vouch for me. My class teacher looked betrayed. I was the student she would always brag about, and now the pride was being replaced by shame. My dad's eyes screamed disappointment, disdain written all over his face.
How could you bring such shame to this family?
From the corner of my eyes, I could see my mom shake her head in disgust.
The apple is truly never far from the tree,
she said under her breath. I wondered what she was talking about.
You'll move into the basement until school asks you to resume.
One evening, my siblings and I got too engaged in a movie and we didn't realize that it was past our bedtime.
Why is the television still turned on?
My mom asked as she turned on the lights. I was about to get defensive when the living room clock struck 12. I didn't realize it was that late.
Turn it off and go to bed. It's late.
We were stunned and watched in fear as she strolled into the kitchen for her regular night rituals. The next morning, we thanked her for not reporting us to Dad, and she nodded. By evening, my dad called all 5 of us to the living room. Mom was sitting beside him. That was a moment of realization.
The 5 of you seem to get more reckless by the day,
said Dad.
And Paul, you keep forgetting that when I'm gone, you will be the man of this house. If you don't keep the house rules now, how will you control the home when I'm no more?
I'm sorry, sir. Those were the only words I could form. I felt betrayed.
You can reflect on your deeds while you serve your punishment. The girls will have their leisure time ceased for a week. As for you, Paul, for spearheading this rebellion, no leisure time for 2 weeks, with a cereal-only diet.
My punishment was also the worst. Almost immediately, I started moving the basic stuff into the basement. By basic stuff, I meant my books, the only luxury I'd be given access to for the next few weeks. While taking out the last set, I spotted my father at the balcony staring into space. Bracing myself, I walked to him to ask him what the problem was that he had with me. The doubt started when my sister suggested that I might be adopted. Their proof was that I always received the worst punishment for anything we did together, so I had to be adopted.
I think Mom and Dad adopted you because they wanted a male child, and you remind them daily of how they can't have one.
Samantha, my eldest sister, announced one day as she strolled into my room for our weekly siblings meeting.
True. Have you noticed how Mom looks at him?
Leah replied with a smirk on her face. Leah was the last of the 4 girls, and 3 years older than me, but we acted like twins. Although I laughed off the conversation, it never left my head.
What is it?
My father's baritone pierced my thoughts.
Why are you staring at me and saying nothing?
Dad, I muttered. Am I adopted? The look on my father's face was new. I'd never seen him surprised. My sisters and I had concluded that our parents had no feelings.
Where did that come from?
You always punish me more than the girls, and it's not fair. I had tears in my eyes now. He smiled.
Let's walk while I tell you a story.
Not the answer I expected, but okay.
There was a filthy rich family many years ago, and they had issues conceiving. After so many years of trying, they had a daughter, and that was the only child born. Being absentee parents, money made up for all they couldn't be, allowing the child to mix with the wrong crowd and finally becoming reckless. At 17, she'd engaged in all forms of vices, drugs, alcohol, partying. It was during one of those parties that her life changed. Drunk as usual, she got into a fight with a stranger who, unfortunately, did not survive a blow to the head. She was arrested, and as usual, her parents' money came to the rescue. Every official on the case was bribed, and she was released. The incident got her sober, and she wondered how differently her life would have played out if her parents did not have the financial capacity to spare her prison. She swore never to allow her children to go down the same path. She went to rehab and became better.
By the time Dad ended his tale, we had gotten to the basement. Confused about what that had to do with my question, I nodded regardless. My mind was still wandering when Dad walked away. I started cleaning up the basement. It was to be my safe place for the next few weeks, so I had to make it worthwhile. The paint on the wall was horrible to look at, but a section looked far worse. I decided to set up my reading table against it. There was no way anyone would fall asleep staring at that wall. When the table hit the wall, it made a hollow sound. I couldn't help but tap on the patterns and realize they were movable. It seemed to be a puzzle. I pushed my table aside and got to work. I wondered what would happen when I finished the puzzle. If it was like any of the movies, then it had to be a secret room. A secret room. I would never have imagined. What else could my parents be hiding from me? I was set to explore when I heard my mom scream.
Paul!
I ran out of the basement to see her hovering over my sister's unconscious body. Oh yes, that's how we got here. We rushed my older sister, Sheila, to the hospital. The doctor said something about stress and needing proper care. This made me very angry. Sheila had been looking pale for weeks and my parents didn't even notice. Their discipline pattern was what got her here in the first place. They were too busy trying to make perfect people out of us. Now, more than ever, I was determined to know what sat behind that wall. Sheila was admitted for 3 weeks, and this gave me enough time to discover what was going on in the basement. On the third day, I finished the puzzle, and the walls opened. Yes, I was right, a secret room. It housed a lot of boxes that contained files. There was a lot to go through, but I was ready for it. The more files I went through, the angrier I became. How could my parents hide such things from us? It was unfair. We deserved to know. I didn't know how to approach my parents, so I crawled into my shell and stayed there. My parents seemed to have noticed my change in countenance. When they walked into my room the day after Sheila was discharged, I was surprised. Mom and Dad usually didn't care about our feelings. They only cared about their version of right.
Are you okay?
Mom asked. I responded with a cold stare. Not like you care, I said inaudibly.
We are your parents, Paul. You can always come to us.
Yes. We don't want you kids growing apart, regardless of whatever happens. We are still family.
As they walked out, I watched my mother carefully, and tears filled my eyes. My family, however broken we were, had rituals, one of which was having breakfast together on Saturday. Everyone had varying schedules during the week, and hence had breakfast at different times. This Saturday, I wasn't looking forward to it, but it came anyway, and I helped Mom set the table. I kept pushing my food around the plate, and my taste buds seemed to be damaged.
Sheila, no phone at the table.
My father's shout brought my wandering mind back. My sister was shaking with fear while Dad glared at her. He was about to make a move for her phone when I screamed, "Stop it!" Everyone stared in shock. "Stop it, Dad," I went on. "We are not you. Stop projecting your insecurities on us. We don't deserve to be treated this way. It's wrong. Punishing us like this changes nothing."
You're right, son. I'm sorry. I just want you kids to turn out better. My bad leg is a good enough reminder of my reckless life.
My dad burst into tears, stood up and limped away. Everyone stared in confusion. There was indeed a rich family long ago with a spoiled child, but it wasn't a girl, it was a son. That son was my dad. He tried to use us to make up for his past mistakes, hence the disciplinary actions. I spent all those days in the secret room I discovered, learning about my family's past. I got the worst punishment because, like Dad, I was the only son. He didn't want me to go down the same path that nearly destroyed him. The days that followed were cold. The atmosphere in the house was so tense, it got everyone speaking and walking with extreme caution. I spent most of my days inside my room, even though my parents had become lenient with us since the Saturday breakfast incident.
We have an appointment with the therapist by 4 p.m. this evening.
My mom casually announced one morning.
My family won't be broken. Not on my watch.
Yes, this would be good for us. There's a lot to fix.
Dad nodded in agreement. It was weird as we all sat together on the couch at the therapist's office. This was the closest we had ever been.
Who wants to speak first?
The therapist asked. The silence that followed was awkward.
Our parents hate us.
Leah said.
What makes you say that?
Their cruelty sent my sister to the hospital. She was admitted for 3 weeks, and they make my brother sleep in the basement all the time. It feels like we're living in the military barracks.
Sheila chipped in.
With the training we get at home, we could qualify for the military.
One after the other, we all aired our grievances, but nothing could have prepared us for what my mom was about to say.
I lost my only brother about 20 years ago. He got into a fight one night at a club, but my family could never get justice for my brother. The murderer's parents were rich, so they paid off the case. I pledged my life to get justice for my brother and proceeded to marry his killer. My plan was to kill him slowly and inherit his family's money as compensation for my brother's death.
This had to be a coincidence, right? My mom couldn't be talking about this marriage, right?
Over the years, I watched this man punish himself for his past. It broke my heart so much, and I couldn't help but fall in love with him.
This time, she was looking at my dad, who seemed like he'd just seen a ghost. He looked like he was about to faint. Then, he went on his knees to apologize to my mom, but she wouldn't let him. Mom pulled him into a hug, which my siblings and I joined in. We spent what was left of the session hugging and crying. Other sessions followed, and we got better as individuals and as a family. Sometimes I wonder how our lives would have still been had I never discovered that secret room.